Sex is a battlefield. Animals will go to every extreme to mate and ensure their survival. Without sex, a species is history. Its genes a dead end. From violent couplings to sperm wars, to mating rituals, and finally, amazingly, to love. Sex drives evolution, and evolution drives sex. In nature, it really is all about sex. Just off the coast of Bimini Island in the Bahamas, scientists are studying a marvel of evolution. Over millions of years, evolution has built the protruding jaw and razor-sharp teeth of the ocean's master predator. But sharks are more than just killing machines. They are pioneers of sex.
500 million years ago, sharks really invented what people would call sex.
Sam Gruber has studied sharks for 45 years.
People basically don't know much about sharks, and they think of them as the death fish from hell, but really they're highly, highly sophisticated, tremendous animals.
In addition to complex navigation and communication systems, sharks were one of the first to develop a whole new way to have sex.
May not look like very much, but it represents a huge evolutionary leap in reproductive behavior. If you look very closely, you'll see these two little finger-like projections, which are called claspers, are actually the penis of the male shark.
400 million years ago, sharks became one of the first vertebrates to evolve a penis. But they were hardly the last. Over millions of years, the penis proved so valuable that it evolved independently in animals as different as insects, birds, and reptiles.
The penis is a good example of convergent evolution because it serves one purpose, but it's arisen in many different ways in a variety of organisms.
But how did the penis become so vital? 700 million years ago, sharks, fish, and other vertebrates have yet to evolve. Sea life is instead comprised of simple, single-celled creatures. To pass on their genes, they don't have to partner up. They can reproduce by themselves.
Reproduction before sex was all asexual. Asexual reproduction means that you just make copies of yourself and send them off into the environment. They have all of your genes and no one else's.
Asexual reproduction does guarantee that 100% of an organism's genes are passed on. But on the evolutionary battlefield, this strategy has one serious flaw. When each and every creature shares the exact same genes, they also share the same genetic weak spots.
Imagine that a virus shows up on the scene, and that virus attacks you if you have a very specific gene sequence in your DNA. Now, if everyone in your population has the same DNA, that means that that virus is going to wipe everyone out.
But with sexual reproduction, the mixing and matching of genes increases the odds of at least some individuals living on. The secret to survival is sex. The first animals to adopt sexual reproduction emerged 600 million years ago. But the sex they practiced is not what humans might imagine. These passive creatures, relatives of modern coral, were tightly anchored to the sea floor. How can you mate when you can't move? Cast sperm and eggs on the waves and hope they meet. Each summer, billions of coral polyps simultaneously launch their reproductive cells into the current. Each coral releases both sperm and egg, but instead of combining with each other, they wait until they encounter the seeds of another coral. No one knows how they do it. This mass spawning is one of nature's most arresting spectacles. But it evolved as a matter of survival.
Mass spawning by corals could be called a defense mechanism. Having all of the eggs and sperm released at the same time allows some of the offspring to survive even when there are predators around. You swamp the predators, you produce so many that they can't all be eaten by those predators at that point in time.
For stationary animals, casting DNA into the ocean may have been the only way to sexually reproduce. But a new class of creatures was about to evolve, and sex would evolve with them.
About 570 million years ago, in a very brief period of time, we see the origin of many different, often very complex body forms, some of which are still with us today. Many forms that resemble modern invertebrates, crustaceans. We even see the first fish.
These early fish could move like no other creatures that came before. Instead of relying on ocean currents to carry their fate, males could directly target the female's eggs with their sperm. But even this method of mating had its pitfalls. The eggs, once fertilized, were not only tiny and fragile, they were exposed. This forced the parents to either stand guard or abandon them altogether. It would take another 200 million years for evolution to come up with a new plan, which is where sharks come in. In sharks, evolution gave rise to an innovation that allowed males to deploy sperm directly inside the females.
Sharks invented sex, so to speak. This is just a huge difference from what we see in animals that lived 500 million years ago. Instead of two fish just randomly spraying their eggs and sperms out into the water, helter-skelter, these animals have to actually come in contact.
Sharks are one of the first vertebrates to physically connect during sex. It may sound friendly, but with sharks, it's anything but.
Cute guys, right? The male will bite her pectoral fin, her arm fin, and roll her over. Then the male has these two claspers, or peni, and one is rotated around while the other stays back, and that's inserted into the female's cloaca, which is the common duct.
This vertical hold may look brutal, but biologically speaking, it's a thing of beauty.
It looks to me like a ballet because they have very difficult tasks to go through to bring themselves together.
Each seemingly violent act has a necessary sexual function. The male flips the female shark to her back to relax her for penile insertion. He sinks his teeth into her skin to trigger her ovulation. She's even protected from his gashing.
Female sharks have skin twice as thick as male sharks. They have amazing healing properties. They can have huge lacerations, which would kill a human, and they're perfectly fine with it.
But the crucial innovation of shark sex is the penis. Once the male is firmly attached, a spur at the appendage's tip prevents it from slipping out. A sac in the male's abdomen fills with seawater and propels the sperm directly into the female's womb, where eggs await fertilization.
So not only did they invent copulation, but they also invented getting pregnant. That is to say, internal fertilization. This represents a whole new stage in reproductive biology.
Internal fertilization has been a foundation of sharks' 400 million year reign as the ocean's top predators. Not only does it protect their developing eggs from enemies, it leads to the birth of large, fully formed pups that are literally born to kill. For hundreds of millions of years, animals would remain confined to the Earth's oceans. 370 million years ago, a unique lineage of fish began to move towards land. Called tetrapods, they evolved legs from fins. In time, those legs became sturdy enough to let them move out of the water. But this new world presented new problems.
If you look around today, there are creatures that spend all their time on land. But to do that, you have to have a whole lot of tricks. You have to be able to lay eggs or give birth to live young. If you are laying eggs, your eggs have to be waterproof.
The fish ancestors of tetrapods simply dropped sperm into the current to fertilize eggs. But that wouldn't work on land. So one group of tetrapods, the ancestor of reptiles and mammals, successfully changed their method of reproduction. As sharks had before them, reptiles developed internal fertilization. And then they went beyond, evolving an extraordinary adaptation to protect their young: the amniotic egg. This marvel of evolutionary engineering not only nourished the developing young within, its hard shell kept the egg from drying out. The amniotic egg gave reptiles the ability to conquer land, reproducing, spreading, and growing on a whole different scale. And for the dinosaurs, this scale would be a big problem. When you're 40 feet long and weigh 6 tons, how do you do it? If you can't mate, if you can't pass on your genes, you are evolutionary history. But what happens if your own size gets in the way of mating? Some dinosaurs evolved to be the biggest animals ever to live on land. With dinosaurs like T-Rex topping out at more than 15 feet, sex gets complicated. And for all we know about dinosaurs, the details of their sex life remains a mystery.
Imagine a 40-ton dinosaur trying to reproduce. Obviously, 2 of these behemoths would have had to get together, but exactly how they did so is still a huge question for paleontologists.
Fossilized eggs are clear evidence that dinosaurs had intercourse and reproduced through internal fertilization like birds today. And the bones of dinosaurs are littered across all 7 continents, testament to creatures that dominated the Earth for 160 million years. Clearly, these enormous animals must have evolved an extremely successful method of mating. Paleontologist Ken Carpenter has puzzled for years over the mystery of dinosaur reproduction.
It's a whole process of trying to understand what dinosaurs were like as living animals. They had to have been able to reproduce in order to be so successful for over 200 million years. How did the males and females get together?
What made Carpenter's investigation difficult was that all he had was bones. No reproductive organs have survived the fossil record. To discover what dinosaur sex might have been like, Carpenter turned to a creative mix of comparative anatomy, physics, and deduction. Starting with the dinosaur's reptile cousin, the crocodile. Male crocodiles have unique sex organs, not like the claspers of the shark, but not a penis as we humans know it either.
Unlike humans, dogs, cats, they don't have this very long organ that sticks out all the time. It's actually a much smaller organ that's kept inside the body.
Most of the time, the male's genitalia is kept inside a slit on his underbelly called the cloaca. During sex, however, muscles inside the cloaca contract, averting the animal's penis. Just 3 inches long in the 12-foot crocodile, the male must insert this tool into the female's cloaca to deposit his sperm. For creatures the size of dinosaurs, that would be like trying to stick a key in a lock by moving the whole building. Was it possible? To find the answer to that question, Carpenter turned to another present-day creature, one that shares the dinosaur's problem of how to fertilize an internal egg, despite its enormous size. The elephant. To reproduce, the male elephant rears up and leans on the female. But doing so puts a huge amount of weight on her back. Over time, this pressure causes permanent damage, creating small fractures in the female's backbones. If dinosaur sex took the same form, Carpenter should find similar fractures in their fossils.
This vertebrae here comes from a duck-billed dinosaur. Possibly this breakage was due to the male climbing on top of a female during sex. Well, maybe, but we'd have to know what gender this vertebrae is. And if it's a male, it would mean one male trying to mate with another male. Maybe that's why dinosaurs became extinct. I don't know.
But the elephant-like rear mount posed a more fundamental problem.
The male would have climbed up, put his weight on her back. Could her bones have supported it?
Elephants weigh up to 7 tons. But some dinosaurs weighed as much as 25 tons. Carpenter calculated the bone strength needed to withstand that much force and concluded that it was too much. The elephant way was out. Undeterred, Carpenter retraced his steps to crocodiles and alligators, creatures with a mating style that avoids load-bearing altogether.
They've got the water to suspend them. It's almost like being in space. The male and females can basically rotate together. The male can stick his penis into the female's cloaca and interject sperm.
So could dinosaurs have had sex underwater? Carpenter consulted the charts.
There were no huge bodies of water, except in a very few places, which would mean then that dinosaurs would have to traipse for sometimes literally thousands of miles in order to have sex. That's an awful lot of work just for sex.
Another dead end. Birds were next. They are the direct descendants of dinosaurs, and they lay eggs like dinosaurs. Could they copulate the same way?
Birds do it basically as a bunch of quickies, mostly because they're trying to fly at the same time as they're trying to reproduce. The males will be fluttering their arms as they're trying to get up against the female.
Birds' quick transfer of sperm, known as a cloacal kiss, would have its advantages for creatures as large as dinosaurs. But again, there are problems. Most dinosaurs don't have wings. And just as importantly, how could they do it with their massive armor in the way? The dinosaur's bony tail is heavy and rigid and not easily moved. The normal procedures of comparative anatomy had left Carpenter with a trail of false leads. Racking his brain for any idea that might work, Carpenter found one right at his feet: the household cat. And while cats are no more like dinosaurs than dogs are like lizards, Carpenter believes the cat's way would work for T-Rex.
If the female lowers herself much like a cat, raises her rear end up, the tail would certainly go up in the air and would expose her sex organ to the male. And the male can then climb up there and grab her on her neck, and then they can go at it.
In the feline position, with the female's head lowered and tail lifted, the problem of the male's enormous weight would be lifted off the female's back. At the same time, the position would allow easy access for the male. Carpenter's theory is the first to offer a workable answer to the mystery of dinosaur sex, and the first to explain how dinosaurs were able to reproduce their way into history as the unrivaled rulers of Earth for 160 million years. Dinosaurs were the largest animals to mate on land. Insects are some of the smallest. And in their tiny world, sex is a war story that's been going on for millions of years, with its own villains and heroes.
You know, when it comes to looking at reproductive biology, you've got to say that cockroaches are a superstar.
65 million years ago, an asteroid 6 miles wide hurtles down from the sky and smashes into the Gulf of Mexico. The impact signals the end of the dinosaur age. Their extinction claims half of all species, turning the Earth into a wasteland. But insects endure. How insects outsurvived so many other animals is still a mystery. Some scientists believe the asteroid's impact caused a temperature shift that put insects into hibernation. When they re-emerged, they flourished, developing new ways to reproduce at staggering rates. But in the insect world, sex is more than just reproducing. It's a battle of the sexes, a war over sperm.
Sperm competition has been extremely important in the evolution and diversification of insects. Males are, of course, competing to make sure their sperm makes it into the female reproductive tract. At the same time, females are able to manipulate which sperm make it to successfully fertilize the egg.
The female seeks multiple sexual partners, giving her offspring a diverse genetic portfolio and a greater chance at survival. But the male seeks to father all the offspring. The more paternity, the better the chances for his genes. What the male wants and the female needs are in conflict, and has spawned an evolutionary arms race, stretching the limits of evolution. A far cry from the shark's simple clasper, insects have evolved the widest variety of penis shapes on the planet. In one of the most shocking, the male damselfly's penis has sharp horns at the tip and spiky thorns down the side. If it looks like a scrub brush, there's a reason. The male uses his tool to scrape out the sperm of his rivals before depositing his own. This technique removes